a spark in the 1700s, when the internet changed everything before it began. Imagine it's the year 1750, a world of powdered wigs, candlelit rooms, horse-drawn carriages, and royal decrees. The American colonies are still under British rule. France is a kingdom ruled by Louis XV. The printing press is still a revolutionary tool, and letters are the fastest form of long-distance communication. If you're lucky, they arrive in weeks. Electricity is a curiosity, not a utility. The world is vast, slow, and fragmented. But then, without warning, something happens. A brilliant inventor, or perhaps a mysterious anomaly, unleashes the impossible, a functioning version of the internet. Not just wires and copper cables, but a full network of digital communication. A primitive but real version of what would become the web of the 21st century. Global messaging, data transmission, live exchange of ideas. To the people of the 18th century, it would seem like magic, or divine intervention, or a threat to the very structure of the world. Let's pause here and ask, what would happen if the internet, our most powerful communication tool, had been invented in the 1700s? This thought experiment isn't just about technology. It's about power, society, information, and chaos. It's about how humanity's story could have taken a completely different path, centuries ahead of schedule. The year 1750 was a tipping point. The Enlightenment was gaining momentum. Philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Kant were challenging monarchies, traditions, and dogma. People were beginning to question divine right and hereditary rule. But ideas spread slowly, by pamphlet, letter, or secret meetings in salons. Now, imagine those same ideas amplified through digital channels. A philosopher in Paris could instantly publish his thoughts online, and a farmer in rural Prussia could read it by morning. Students in Boston could communicate with rebels in France. A blacksmith in Lisbon could debate theology with a monk in Rome. The boundaries of class, location, and language would begin to dissolve. Revolutions would no longer require slow planning and covert whispers. They could erupt through memes, viral manifestos, and online petitions. The internet wouldn't just be a tool, it would be a weapon, a mirror, a revolution, and it would terrify the ruling class. Governments that rely on secrecy, slow communication, and censorship would suddenly face a tidal wave of public awareness. Church leaders would panic at the speed of theological debate. Monarchs would scramble to shut down what they couldn't understand. The balance of power would begin to fracture. What would the church do when sermons are uploaded and criticized instantly? How would kings react when citizens form online assemblies, planning protests across continents? And perhaps the most terrifying of all, the democratization of knowledge. In a world where literacy is a privilege, the internet makes information available to all, whether you're a prince or a peasant. A young girl in rural Spain could teach herself astronomy. A boy in Dublin could learn engineering from blueprints shared in Berlin. No school? No problem. The school is now the screen. This single invention would create ripples that shake the very foundations of history. The question isn't if it would change the world. The real question is, how far would the ripple go? That's what we'll explore through 6 chapters of alternate history, technological paradoxes, and political upheaval. Buckle up! The 18th century just got a high-speed upgrade. Before diving into the impact of a digital revolution in the 18th century, we must first understand the world as it was. The year 1750 marked a fascinating crossroad. The Age of Enlightenment was in full bloom. European colonial empires were expanding, and scientific curiosity was emerging, but all still shackled by ancient traditions. Europe was ruled by monarchs with absolute power, kings governed by divine right, supported by the church. Society was rigidly stratified, nobles at the top, clergy influential, merchants rising, and peasants at the bottom. Social mobility was rare. Most people lived in rural areas under feudal systems, with little education or upward opportunity. Religion dictated daily life. The Catholic Church held immense sway, while Protestantism was spreading. Questioning religious or royal authority could mean prison or death. Communication was agonizingly slow. A letter from Paris to Rome might take weeks. The fastest news traveled by horseback or ship. Across dangerous seas, knowledge spread at the pace of hooves and sails. Technologically, the world was pre-industrial. Steam engines were in their infancy, factories rare. Electricity hadn't been harnessed. Medicine was primitive. Bloodletting and balancing bodily fluids were common. No vaccines, no germ theory. Hospitals, as we know them today, didn't exist. Education was reserved for elites. Universities were rare, and many still taught church doctrine over science. Though the printing press was widespread, books were expensive and literacy was limited. For the average villager, the idea of global information was fantasy. Meanwhile, colonialism surged. Britain, France, Spain, Portugal controlled vast overseas territories. The transatlantic slave trade peaked. Wealth flowed into Europe, along with disease, warfare, and rebellion. And yet, change was stirring. Enlightenment thinkers like Locke and Montesquieu challenged old hierarchies. Telescopes peered into the cosmos. Microscopes explored the unseen. But all of this was limited to a tiny intellectual elite. The average person, say a blacksmith in Bavaria or a farmer in rural China, remained cut off from global discovery. Now imagine dropping the internet into this world. The gap between rulers and the ruled collapses. A peasant in rural France could read radical ideas from Paris the same day. Revolutionary pamphlets wouldn't take weeks to distribute, they'd go viral overnight. European scientists could bypass church censors, sharing discoveries instantly. Galileo might have found global backing online. Enlightenment values could spread 10 times faster, through forums, shared docs, and real-time discourse. Colonized people, kept in ignorance by design, could access information, connect, and organize uprisings. Revolutions in Haiti, India, or Latin America might have occurred decades earlier. But here lies the contradiction. Absolute power thrives on controlling knowledge. Kings, popes, and feudal lords held sway because they controlled what people knew. With the internet, that monopoly would shatter. An information explosion in 1750 wouldn't just speed up communication, it would rip through the foundation of society. Power would no longer be secure by status, but by adaptability. And so, understanding 1750 is key to imagining how internet could ignite history. The world stood on the brink of modernity, just waiting for a spark. The internet, had it arrived, might have been that spark. Next, we'll explore what would happen the moment the first browser loaded, in a world still lit by candles. Imagine the scene. In the spring of 1751, a strange device is delivered to a London printing house. It hums with energy. A metal box with a glowing screen. A few curious scholars crowd around as the word Google appears. At first, they think it's witchcraft, but then one of them types, "What is electricity?" And in that moment, the modern world crashes into the 18th century. The impact would be instant and overwhelming. The first ripple would strike the intellectual elite. Enlightenment philosophers, long isolated in their academic circles, would suddenly access the knowledge of the future. The encyclopedia, once a monumental project, becomes trivial when Wikipedia exists. Scientists could bypass centuries of trial and error. Newtonian physics? Check. Germ theory? Verified. The concept of evolution? A century early. Medicine, too, would leap forward. Instead of bleeding patients or balancing humors, doctors could study anatomy digitally. Vaccination techniques, antiseptics, and even surgical procedures could be learned overnight. Hospitals would begin to resemble modern clinics, far earlier than in our timeline. Military strategy would shift violently. Generals might learn about modern warfare, tanks, trench combat, guerrilla tactics, centuries ahead of schedule. Empires would rush to weaponize this knowledge. A king who Googles atomic bomb might not understand it, but he'd know enough to start chasing it. Meanwhile, the church would panic. Theological control depends on restricted knowledge. But now, a peasant could read Darwin, a merchant could read the Quran and the Bible in different languages, instantly. Dogma would crumble under the weight of global information. Politics would erupt. Revolutionaries, inspired by ideas of liberty and democracy from the 21st century, would mobilize. The American Revolution? It could happen 30 years earlier. The French Revolution? Even bloodier, but more organized. Colonial revolts would explode across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. The economic world would be stunned. Merchants would discover concepts like capitalism, credit, and cryptocurrency. Stock markets would emerge. Supply chains would reorganize. Even basic logistics, like shipping routes, would become more efficient overnight. Globalization could begin 2 centuries earlier. But this flood of knowledge would bring chaos, too. Infrastructure wasn't ready. Power? Internet needs electricity. Most of the world in 1750 had none. That single laptop, glowing in a dark room, could become a symbol of salvation, or heresy. Some would try to destroy it, others would worship it, still others would see it as a tool for power. And that, perhaps, is the most dangerous part. The first person to truly understand the Internet in 1750 might not use it to help the world. They might use it to rule it. The year is 1752. The world is no longer the same. The Internet, still limited to a handful of devices and places, has become the most powerful force on Earth. But the question is no longer, what is this? The question now is, who controls it? Across Europe, 3 main factions begin to emerge, each realizing the potential of the Internet to reshape the world in their own image. The monarchs, the crowned gatekeepers. Kings and queens see the Internet as a new instrument of control. In a world where letters took weeks to travel, instant messaging is a weapon. Monarchies begin recruiting scholars, proto-hackers, to build primitive firewalls, digital couriers, and encrypted systems. In France, King Louis XV orders all Internet terminals be installed inside royal courts only. He appoints information lords to monitor online activity. Anyone accessing banned materials, like revolutionary texts or foreign philosophies, is imprisoned or worse. In Prussia, Frederick the Great goes further. He uses the Internet to build a new military doctrine based on 21st century tactics. Secretly, his agents scour for future blueprints: machine guns, submarines, even drones. His goal? Build an army so advanced no other empire can resist. The Church, theological firewall. Meanwhile, the Catholic Church sees the Internet as both threat and salvation. Pope Benedict XIV calls a secret council. This is no ordinary device, he warns. This is divine or demonic. He orders the Vatican's finest theologians and scribes to study it. They discover the Internet contains every version of the Bible. every religious critique, every heretical idea. Their response? Censorship. The Index Librorum Prohibitorum is digitized. Algorithms are crafted, crude but functional, to block sinful searches. Priests are trained to become digital confessors, guiding the faithful through the web as they would through life. But not all within the Church agree. A group of radical monks break off, calling themselves the Code of God. They believe the Internet is divine prophecy. They begin uploading sermons, scriptures, and visions from the future. And people listen. The enlightened, rebels of knowledge. Then come the Enlightenment thinkers, Voltaire, Rousseau, Kant. They see the Internet as a weapon not of war or religion, but of liberation. A tool to destroy tyranny and spread reason. They set up secret net houses where people read banned articles, watch democratic debates from the future, and learn about human rights centuries ahead of schedule. The underground digital revolution grows. Revolutionary groups begin sharing tactics, manifestos, and instructions on making printing presses, protest leaflets, and even early bombs. They spread ideas faster than any horse could ride. Governments respond with digital purges. Wires are cut. Devices seized. But, like all revolutions, the more it is suppressed, the faster it spreads. Espionage and sabotage. As factions grow, so do secret wars. Britain sets up the Royal Eye, the world's first proto-intelligence agency, spying on internet traffic from France and Spain. Counter-espionage becomes a digital game of shadows. Fake websites are planted to lure rebels. Trojan files are used to sabotage Prussian research. Assassinations follow. A philosopher in Vienna is poisoned. His only crime? Publishing a blog post titled, "Monarchy Must Fall." In Madrid, a bishop disappears after accessing atheist forums. In St. Petersburg, the Tsar's cousin is executed for leaking military plans through encrypted email. The Internet has become the battlefield. The dark net of 1752. A new layer forms, hidden networks outside control. Called the Shadow Scrolls, it's a collection of rogue servers in Amsterdam and Istanbul, hosting forbidden knowledge, secret alliances, blueprints for flying machines, even scans of future history books. Access is limited. Coded phrases are traded in taverns. Encrypted maps are drawn on parchment. Trust is everything. One leak, and an entire network burns. The question remains, who will win this battle for control? Monarchs want obedience. The Church wants salvation. The rebels want freedom. But in a world unprepared for the future, power tends to fall into the hands of those who want it most. The moment the Internet was introduced in the 18th century, a fuse was lit, one that would burn through centuries of traditional progress, altering the course of human history far earlier than ever expected. The scientific revolution accelerates. With access to digitized encyclopedias, physics equations, and even blueprints of 20th century machines, scientists in the 18th century gain a massive head start. Concepts that wouldn't be formalized until the 1900s, like relativity, germ theory, electricity grids, or rocket propulsion, are now open secrets. A young scientist in Scotland discovers the structure of DNA by reading online medical journals. In Florence, an engineer designs an early combustion engine, guided by diagrams downloaded from the future. By 1780, Europe sees its first experimental vaccine factory and basic electric generators powering entire city blocks. The Industrial Revolution, once projected for the mid-19th century, is pulled forward by nearly 100 years. Steam power becomes obsolete faster. Factories start adopting hybrid electric-mechanical systems. Trains arrive in the 1760s. Airships by the 1780s. Early rise of artificial intelligence. Using simplified programming languages recovered online, mathematicians start experimenting with primitive algorithms. The ideas of Turing and Ada Lovelace are discovered a century early. Wooden punch cards become a gateway to automation. By 1800, mechanical minds, automated tabulators powered by gears and code, are in use in large libraries and early banks. Though not conscious, these machines can sort, calculate, and even predict crop yields. Scholars begin questioning, if a machine can think, is it alive? This sparks the earliest debates in AI ethics, 200 years before Silicon Valley. Global shifts in power knowledge is no longer local. Villages in India, towns in Africa, and islands in the Pacific gain access to the same data as the British elite. Young minds from colonized nations find online libraries and scientific papers, and they begin asking dangerous questions. Rebellions inspired by global freedom movements now happen in parallel. A revolt in the Caribbean is timed precisely with a protest in Bengal, thanks to synchronized encrypted messaging. Empires begin crumbling under the weight of real-time resistance. Colonial powers try to shut down global servers, but fail. The flow of information cannot be stopped. By 1820, a young revolutionist in West Africa is giving speeches about equal rights, quoting political theorists from the 21st century. Environmental awareness arrives centuries early. Scientists gain access to climate reports, data on deforestation, and photos of polluted oceans. By 1805, environmentalism becomes a movement, not out of philosophy, but out of proof. Laws are passed to limit coal burning. Forest reserves are created in France and Austria. Early wind turbines appear on Dutch rooftops. A new generation of thinkers argue the future is not only a place of possibility, but one we must protect. In a time when nature was seen as infinite, the Internet reveals its fragility. Social reforms and the seeds of civil rights online, texts about feminism, civil rights, and equality spread like wildfire. Women in 1790s England read about future voting rights. Activists in Brazil learn about nonviolent protest from Martin Luther King Jr. decades before his birth. Schools begin teaching from online syllabi that include perspectives from every corner of the globe. History is no longer told by the victors. It's available, raw, and unfiltered for anyone to read. This creates tension. Some elites embrace reform. Others resist violently. But the Internet ensures that once people know they can be free, they never forget. The long-term impact is clear. History is rewritten not by conquest, but by connection. History is often told as a linear journey. Stone to bronze, horse to car, parchment to pixel. But what if that path was bent? What if a ripple from the future reached into the past, changing everything? The hypothetical emergence of the Internet in the 18th century challenges our entire understanding of how civilizations evolve. It asks, are we progressing because of time or because of access to information? The story we just unfolded shows that technology is not just a tool. It's a force, one that empowers or disrupts, liberates or controls, builds or destroys, depending on who holds it and when. The butterfly effect of knowledge. A simple web page in 1750 could spread faster than war. A video tutorial on electricity could prevent plagues. A leaked diplomatic letter could end an empire. By giving voice to the voiceless and light to the unseen, the Internet acts as history's great equalizer. Yet it also opens doors to manipulation, surveillance, and division, centuries ahead of schedule. The future didn't arrive all at once. It trickled in, and the ones who listened, learned, and adapted rewrote their destiny. Could the internet have prevented bloodshed? This question echoes louder as we reflect on revolutions that turned violent, wars that lasted decades, and ideas that were suppressed for centuries. If knowledge had been democratized in 1750, could some of history's darkest chapters have been rewritten? Could the Holocaust have been prevented? Could slavery have ended sooner? Could colonialism have unraveled through peaceful resistance? Maybe. Or maybe new technologies would have brought new weapons, new tyrants, and new forms of oppression. Progress is not a guarantee. It's a choice, a fragile one. History is not fixed. By imagining the internet in the 18th century, we realize that history is not a dusty archive of facts. It's a collection of possibilities. Every choice, every invention, every delay or acceleration rewires the future. Today, we often take connectivity for granted. We scroll endlessly. We tweet thoughtlessly. We forget that not long ago, communication took weeks, and ideas lived and died in isolation. This story is a mirror. It reflects not only what could have been, but what could still be if we use our tools with wisdom. Final thought. Technology alone doesn't save us. The internet in the 1700s could have sparked a golden age or accelerated collapse. It all depends on how humanity chooses to wield power. History teaches us that invention without ethics is dangerous. Speed without understanding leads to chaos, and access without empathy creates division. So whether in the 18th century or the 21st, the question remains, will we use our technology to build a better world, or merely a faster one? Thank you for traveling with us through this alternate timeline. If this story made you think, share it, and imagine how different tomorrow could be.